The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. I'm Thomas Salerno, and joining me today on the panel are Pat Mason. Hello, Pat.
Howdy, Thomas.
And Jeff Haecker. Hey there, Jeff.
Hey, Thomas.
And be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app or directory. And you can find us on the StarQuest YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And of course, be sure to get your official Secrets of Middle-earth gear, including our awesome t-shirt at sqpn.com/merch. All right, we are continuing our march through the Silmarillion, and we'll be slowing down our pace a bit, because we have reached Chapter 9 of the Quenta Silmarillion, The Flight of the Noldor. And there is so much to talk about here that we're just going to be doing this one chapter for this episode. And probably going forward, we'd probably do at most just one or two chapters an episode, because we're in the real heart of the Silmarillion now. Things get real.
Yeah. I'm sure for the Lands episode, we'll do like 6 or 7 episodes just for that chapter.
Just on Lands of Beleriand, yes.
That's the rest of the year for us.
That's it from here on.
and folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, you soon will. and yeah, I've actually gotten some feedback from people who've mentioned to me that they're reading through the Silmarillion along with us for the first time, so that's exciting. Someone told me that they finally know how to pronounce most people's names after listening to us.
Yeah, we probably have it wrong too, though. So
that's true. Yeah,
between New York and Texas, something's gotten messed up there.
We don't have authentic Noldorian accents. Yeah. So
listen to Christopher Tolkien's recordings or Andy Serkis or any of the official narrators for final authority on that.
Mm-hmm. So just a brief recap of what we talked about on our last Silmarillion episode.
Last time on Silmarillion Ballsy.
Yeah. That's perfect. That we need to do that from now on.
Okay.
Last time on the Silmarillion. That brings back memories. Oh, that's good. Okay. So last time, Melkor was released from his captivity in the halls of Mandos, and he feigns friendship with the Noldor, all the while sowing lies and mistrust among them. Above all else, Melkor covets the Silmarils, the 3 jewels made by the Noldoran smith Feanor that capture the light of the 2 trees of Yavanna. Melkor's lies sway the heart of Feanor, who in his pride and suspicion speaks against the rule of the Valar and draws blade against his half-brother Fingolfin. At a great feast, the Valar attempt to repair the breach and reconcile the Noldor, but on that very day, Melkor attacks Valinor with the giant spider Ungoliant, and together they destroy the 2 trees, plunging the blessed realm of Aman into darkness and gloom. Bum, bum, bum. It just occurred to me as I was reading this, actually, that Ungoliant is very Lovecraftian for a Tolkien creation, don't you think? Because she doesn't have a full explanation of what she is, and she's just kind of this strange, dark abomination.
Yeah, honestly, she strikes me as very similar to Shub Niggurath, the goat with a thousand young, or the hungering maw. It gets displayed as just this constant eating thing. Wonder who stole from who.
I mean, they were pretty much Tolkien and Lovecraft were working at the same time, pretty much, just separated by an ocean, They had very different views on politics and worldview and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, she does. I agree. She very much strikes me as kind of, kind of in the same way as the sleepless things that are underneath the mountains and it's sort of this out of darkness kind of stuff that you get. That's very Lovecraftian feeling. And I wonder if it's just there was a lot of kind of media in that time that was sort of chipping at those, kind of interesting things you could run down, ideas you could run down. And Lovecraft just really tapped into it and went for a ride.
Yeah.
Or did they know about each other? Because I don't know if Tolkien read, because most of Lovecraft stuff was published in magazines, and so it was being continuously put out. It wasn't like Tolkien stuff, which was, you have books which take a long time to get made and then come out and then get reviewed. So I'm wondering if Tolkien was aware of Lovecraft.
Yeah, or Howard, Robert Howard, was also working at the same time. I know he was influenced by Lovecraft, probably to his detriment, but because he sometimes he straight up uses like some of those names like of Lovecraftian horrors in the Conan universe. But the 30s and 40s and kind of 50s, that mid 20th century was a very interesting time in fantasy, both on this side of the water and in England. And I wonder if they were just kind of two separate ecosystems, or if there was any like reading at all between them. But yeah, we have left off at that kind of cliffhanger of the death of the two trees. The Valar are in disarray. They don't know what to do. And what will Feanor do next? Well, we'll find out in this new episode. So,
spoiler, it's nothing good.
Yeah, of course, spoilers are on, because there's a lot to talk about here in The Flight of the Noldor. So just a brief plot recap summary of this chapter. All right, in the wake of Melkor and Ungoliant's assault on Valinor, Yavanna is unable to restore life to the two trees. Their light now lives only in the Silmarils. Feanor is unwilling to give up his greatest creations, and he soon learns that Melkor has murdered his father Finwë and seized the Silmarils, fleeing with Ungoliant to Middle-earth. Feanor curses Melkor and names him Morgoth, the Black Foe. Nigh to Angband, Ungoliant demands that Morgoth surrender to her the treasures of the Noldor, but the Dark Lord names the Silmarils unto himself forever. Ungoliant attacks Morgoth with her dark webs, but the Dark Lord is rescued by his Balrogs, who rush to his aid from Angband. Ungoliant flees into Beleriand, and there she breeds the fell race of giant spiders. Morgoth forges an iron crown for himself and sets the Silmarils in it. Feanor, in words of anger and pride, sways many of the Noldor to his cause, a quest of vengeance to recover the Silmarils at all costs and to claim realms in Middle-earth before the coming of men. To this purpose, Feanor and his 7 sons swear a dreadful oath in the name of Eru Ilúvatar. Feanor realizes that he will need ships to cross to Middle-earth, and when he is unable to persuade the Teleri to join in his rebellion, he seizes their ships by force of arms, perpetrating the first kinslaying of the elves. The Valar lay a doom upon the Noldor, a ban of exile from Valinor. Feanor takes his followers in the Teleri ships and abandons the host of his brother Fingolfin to their fate, setting the vessels ablaze on the shores of Middle-earth. But Fingolfin and his people dare to pass the Helcaraxe, the grinding ice, and so come to Middle-earth at last at the first rising of the moon. Woo! Okay. That is like a chapter and a half.
Yeah. All of the bad things all at once.
It's interesting how we have Feanor speaking so openly against the Valar at this point. Like when they kind of first hint to him, hey, can we those Silmarils might be able to, rekindle the two trees. And he says, a thief shall reveal thieves. Like he compares them to Morgoth, essentially. His mind is not in a good place at this point. Even though he himself hated Melkor, Melkor's lies were still able to kind of penetrate his subconscious,
I mean, he didn't, in some ways, he didn't, Morgoth didn't lie, because he did say the Valar will want to steal the Silmarils, and the Valar did steal them, so.
Or, well, they asked that he surrender them willingly. Yeah.
Right. No, he's talking about Melkor, the Valar.
Yeah, I'm talking about Melkor actually stealing them.
And he is a Vala.
Right.
Yeah, which comes up later because, Feanor says, isn't he one of you? I will not stay with the kin of my father's slayer, he calls them. So, yeah, he refuses to see, the obvious difference between the Lords of the West and Melkor. That, one is obviously corrupted, and the others are trying to do the right thing. They don't always succeed, but, they are Eru's emissaries. You can't just blow them off.
Yeah, I feel like this whole thing was bungled about as hard as you probably could have from both sides of the ball. I just feel like the Valar just are so unused to speaking, or maybe that they just mess it up every time they do it. I don't know, because every time they seem to talk, something goes awry.
Oh no!
And because you have Tolkien just gets ticked off. He's like, "Come on, man, give me the Silmarils."
What you waiting for, bro?
Yeah, exactly. But it was nice to see that. Or shoot, am I saying that? Is it Orome?
It was Aule, right? You're thinking Aule, of when he says you don't know what you're asking of him.
Yeah, and then Feanor kind of clings off that and says, just like the trees was a one-time thing for you, the Silmarils was a one-time thing for me, and it will probably kill me if I break them. And I actually don't think Feanor's lying. I think he's actually speaking the truth at that point. I think it would cost him pretty dearly to do that. On the other hand, he's not in his right mind in a lot of ways at this point. He's sort of been under the influence of Melkor's lies for a while. He's been kicked out of his home. He's been living with his dad and his sons. And I'm sure while his dad hasn't been feeding his self-righteous fire, his sons probably have been.
Yeah. I wonder if he literally did, almost like Sauron in The Ring, pour some of his life force into the Silmarils, wherein breaking them would literally kill him.
Yeah.
Drain most of his life force.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty common idea in Tolkien of when you make something, you give some power out of yourself, whether it's making a weapon or a ring or, Silmarils. So I think that's definitely what's going on is some of he poured some of his essence into them, maybe not as in as negative a way as Sauron did when he made the ring, but I think definitely some, there's at least some of Feanor's own life put into them, or some of his own will or creative spirit or whatever you want to say.
And meanwhile, we've got Morgoth in this great scene of confronting Ungoliant, and he's like, okay, yeah, here's some jewels, take them. And I love how she's just like, you said you'd give everything to me with both hands, and he's literally hiding the Silmarils in his clenched fist, as they're burning him. And then, of course, he's rescued by his Balrogs. We get to see the Balrogs do something for the first time.
Yeah, I love the scream that he lets out when Ungoliant goes after him.
Lamoth.
That it just echoes around, and if anybody screams or cries in that country, that it brings the echoes back into life. That this, it's just such an interesting thought that you have this terrible being doing this terrible thing and is in anguish because oh no, is it backfired? and and I'm going to lose the thing, the thing I really want. And that sort of embeds itself into the land itself, like into the very essence of that part of Arda. It's sort of kind of similar to, I think, a haunting, right, where something traumatic happens and it sort of stains that space with the essence of the thing that happened. And it's interesting to me that like, you don't have very many of the Valar putting that sort of stamp on Middle Earth, but Melkor gets to, or Morgoth at that point.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, come on, man. Like, you just ruined this whole land.
Forever. Yeah. Like maybe the other Valar simply never tried to, like, because that seems more like, maybe it seems more like you're imprinting yourself so much on the land that it's more like domination and less like caretaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're literally just stamping it with your presence.
Like he finally got his creative thing. Like when he wanted to turn the music or his discord within the music of the Ainur, he finally got to, put his like you said, his own stamp on something, and it's not the way he intended, but he finally got there. But it's his screams that are like sealed within the land and echoes, will echo for as long as Arda exists.
Yeah, that is super creepy.
Right? It's always going to be there. You see like a bunch of elves like after the end of the world, and they're supposed to be remaking Arda, and they're just staring out of this thing and they're like, yeah, let's nuke it from orbit. there's no reclaiming this part.
It reminds me of like, okay, when like if either of you have ever owned like a PlayStation 2 in the past, if you opened the disc tray during like a certain like piece of music or character making a sound, it would just sustain that note forever out of the TV until you took the disc out. So like if it was in the middle of a character like screaming and you popped open the disc tray, it'd just be like, ah! Like it would just my brother and I used to do that when we played Star Wars Battlefront, and like, when the rebels win, they would do that rebel yell thing, and we just like pop open the disc tray and it would like continue on.
Never ending rebel yell.
And Ungoliant, meanwhile, she escapes to how do you pronounce this? Nandungortheb, the Valley of Dreadful Death. It's like, gee,
scary place.
Tell me there's something evil here without telling me there's something evil here. The Valley of Dreadful Death, where she eventually, does she devour herself there, or does she do it somewhere else?
No, it doesn't specify. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It says that something like some have said that, or like, it's been said that she finally devoured herself out of her insatiable hunger.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those, like, it's very Tolkien to like leave it up as like a tale or legend lost to time that you'll never know if it's, how true it is or how real it is.
Right. And we get the first name drop of Thangorodrim, the three volcanic peaks that are raised up over Angband. He does some home renovation, and he's like,
It's another scene characterizing the Valar not doing their jobs. It's like, oh yeah, in their haste, they didn't go all the way down to the bottom and find all of the Balrogs hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
and they just came up and found their master again. And come on, guys.
But you start to see the beginning of kind of the power seeping out of Melkor, because he needs to be rescued by his minions at this point, and he'll eventually get to a state where he's so tied to the physical form that he's taken that not only can he can't shapeshift anymore, but he can actually be injured. So we start to see that kind of the lessening of his power as it goes out into his creatures and his stuff that he made.
Yeah, because it says like his hand, is black from handling the box the Silmarils were in, and it never turns back. Like it stays black forevermore. Mm-hmm. And the crown, once he gets the crown on his head, he only takes it off one time, and he only goes out from his fortress, once or twice, once in disguise and once as when he goes for the fight, which is just such a cool scene.
Right.
Yeah, but it talks about when so much power's gone out of him that when Ungoliant starts to, and I think that was actually part of the Scream, really, is the realization that he's trapped like that now. Because if I was a multi-dimensional shape-shifting being that suddenly got trapped in a single body, I don't know, I'd kind of be mad about it.
That reminds me of when, this is another PS2 video game reference. You can tell where when I played most of my video games. But there was an X-Men game where if Cyclops died, he would just go, "How could I let this happen?" And I feel like that's Melkor at this point. How could I let this happen?
The reference that came to my mind was in Star Trek DS9 when Odo loses his changeling powers for a while. He's kind of distraught because he's now this, attached to this mortal form when he was previously basically immortal and could shapeshift into whatever he wanted. Although that, different scenario because that was kind of as a result of other things and not his own choices. But
meanwhile, back in Valinor, and this is interesting because it gets us into a conversation of oaths in Tolkien's universe. We have the dreadful oath of Feanor and his 7 sons.
Oh, yeah.
And in Tolkien's works, oaths work. Especially if they're oaths taken in Eru's name. They actually do something metaphysically to the oath speaker.
Yeah, I mean, the other big example that comes to mind is the Oathbreakers in Return of the King that were not able to kind of move on because they broke their oath to, I believe they swore it to Isildur, and they broke it, and they were, as depicted in the film, they were ghosts, basically, up until they could kind of finally fulfill an oath to Aragorn. So yeah, don't make an oath when you don't you think about all the consequences before you make an oath in Middle Earth.
Yeah. Well, and I think honestly, I really do think that's true in life as well. I think Jesus is pretty clear. He's like, don't do that. Don't swear by God. Don't swear by the earth. Don't just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Do not meddle in the affairs of dragons, foolish mortal.
Yeah. But I feel like oaths in the Legendarium almost have a kind of sacramental quality to them, in the sense that, almost like in marriage or holy orders, something metaphysical happens when you make these promises. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on when they make these promises and make these oaths. It literally does bind them. If you break them, you're going to be cursed, man.
Yeah, because there's good oaths too. I believe the Fellowship, when they're setting out, they swear an oath, and then I don't.
Oh, actually, I just reread that part. Elrond said, he literally says, "I'm not having you swear an oath because I don't want something really bad to happen."
But I think later on, after in Return of the King, there's oaths sworn of everlasting friendship between kind of some of the survivors of the Fellowship. There's another oath that it comes to mind, but I won't. It's spoilery for later Silmarillion, so I won't mention here, because if we're gonna stick to only what we've read so far. But yeah, definitely oaths are a thing to keep in mind as you read.
Yeah, and I think one of the important connectors is that oaths always come with a doom. There's always and doom doesn't necessarily mean doomsday. The we call doom is always a negative thing, it's a bad. but it just means like now there is something fated, more or less, that's going to happen because of this oath. And it's not always bad, but it's definitely pretty bad here.
Yeah. And they focus pretty heavily on Feanor and the Seven Sons taking the oath. What was interesting and an outlier that I noticed in this reread through was that Galadriel actually did not take the oath. I thought that was very interesting.
I thought her family, or did her family take the oath, but they just weren't part of the kinslaying, or was it just Galadriel who didn't swear the oath? Because I thought it was
she personally did not swear it.
Yeah, I didn't think her family did either. But
yeah, I didn't think so. I thought it was like it's like distinctly that her family, like her and her brothers and her father, did not swear the oath.
I think she gets pointed out as one of the few who takes part in the debates, who actually speaks.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, while she doesn't take Feanor's oath, she does take his side.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because if you read the, I can't remember if it's the Lost Tales or the Unfinished Tales, the way Galadriel, all of this happens with Galadriel seems to have changed slowly over time in Tolkien's mind. Because what we get in the Silmarillion is she doesn't swear the oath, but she goes along, and then she gets left on the shore, and then she's got to cross the Helcaraxis. But in some of Tolkien's writings, he talks about her coming over via boat. Like she came over later, and she's still part of the host of the Noldor, but not in the same fashion. And it's interesting. I would be interested to see where Tolkien kind of left it, because I guess the official we have is the Silmarillion version.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that was how things were in Tolkien's mind, by the time he was done with it. Maybe he wasn't done with it.
I don't think he was. Yeah. And especially if you read in Unfinished Tales, the stuff with Galadriel and Celeborn is so confused. There's so many competing versions of their story. Like he clearly viewed Galadriel as like a fulcrum character, and he wanted to get her story like right. And so he kept tweaking it. Yeah. But in the published Silmarillion version, you're right, Pat. It says she contends with the princes, and her motivation seems to be less getting revenge on Morgoth as it is for ruling realms in Middle Earth.
Which is the opposite of what we get in the Rings of Power.
I know. I was like, that made me think about it. Because they could have gone an interesting direction with her, because that could have provided an interesting angle for Sauron to tempt her. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have Sauron tempt Galadriel, he's like, I've got a realm for you ready made, like Mordor. And, of course, maybe before it was all ash choked and ruined and stuff. But
well, he kind of tried to make her his queen of all of Middle Earth, so he was kind of giving him give her the realm of Middle Earth. But yeah, I have the book here, and I was just looking, and she did not swear the oath, and I don't think, because it says Fingolfin and Torgon who spoke against Feanor, so I don't think they did, and a lot of Finway's other sons did not speak or did not swear the oath. I don't believe. And
Galadriel's father, Finarfin, stays behind, right? He doesn't go.
Yeah.
He gets to a certain point. He's like, nah, I'm out. I don't need all this.
I'm 1 billion years old. I don't need this in my life.
Yeah. I'm too old for this stuff.
Yeah.
I remember Middle Earth. It wasn't that great. Feanor doesn't. He was born here. He's talking nonsense.
That's right. And some of the way Feanor talks, he acts sometimes like he's seen Middle Earth, but he clearly has not. And he talks like a person who thinks he knows what Middle Earth is like, but really has not seen it.
Yeah. Or who the men are, or or even how Morgoth is, because I think Manwë makes it pretty clear. He's like, look, you're not going to beat this guy. He's one of us. Like, even if we tripled you in power, sorry, like it's just not in the cards. That's and Feanor's like, yeah, so what? I'm still going to try.
Yeah, he even goes to the point of basically saying that, like, I'm going to make you impressed by my determination to beat this guy. Even if I go down, he's like, my defeat will be glorious. I will make you respect and admire me. You know, like, I'll have the last laugh. Like, and I'm like, man, you are a certain, you know, I don't know how to describe him, you know.
Got that spirit of fire in him.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But then the Valar say that, you know, that their oath will betray the oath of the Noldor will betray them, for blood will render blood. Because as I mentioned in the recap, we have the first kinslaying, which, and I like how Tolkien describes it as essentially, well, first of all, I liked the debate. What did you guys think of the debate between Feanor and, what's his name? Olwe? The chief of the Teleri.
Can we read the oath first? Because I think it's just so important for everything that happens later on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in fact, thank you for reminding me of that, because I was going to suggest it.
Okay. Before we get to the kinslaying, it's just like if one of you guys has it up, I don't have it up.
I mean, I have the book here. Do you want?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It says, then Feanor swore a terrible oath. His 7 sons leapt straightway to his side and took the self-same vow together, and red as blood shone their drawn swords in the glare of the torches. They swore an oath which none shall break, and none should take, by the name even of Iluvatar, calling the everlasting dark upon them if they kept it not. And Manwë they named in witness, and Varda, and the hallowed mountain of Taniquetil, vowing to pursue with vengeance and hatred to the ends of the world Vala, demon, elf, or man as yet unborn, or any creature great or small, good or evil, that time should bring forth unto the end of days, whoso should hold or take or keep a Silmaril from their possession.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. And good or evil, right? Like that.
Mhm.
And for me, I think that's going to be the crux of where everything goes terribly wrong going forward.
Right.
Is that portion of the oath.
In the case of the kinslaying, it's even to the point of like, okay, you're in our way of us, you know, making good on this oath. And if you're going to put obstacles in our way, we'll consider you enemies.
Well, and even does it to his own people when they cross, the Great Sea. He burns the ships so that they can't go back.
Yeah.
Not only can they not go back, but he abandons his brother and the most of the people.
Yeah, it's like he keeps his sons with him, or like his sons, you know, like the very, you know, I can't think of the word, the indoctrinated Noldor, with him, and burns the ship so that no one can get back.
Yeah.
And no one can turn away because it starts to talk about as they, you know, as we'll get to in a minute, as they start to make this journey, some of the Noldor start kind of questioning things of like, was this the best idea? And he kind of has to like keep whipping them onward, because he knows if they start kind of questioning him, like it's going to, dissent among the ranks will spread, and they'll all start to realize, ooh, maybe this was not the best idea to do all this.
It's almost like getting them all involved in the kinslaying helps him bind the Noldor more to him, because he's like, see, you've all done bad now. Now you have to join me full tilt because you're murderers.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go back.
Now you're stuck with me. And, whoever's not for me is against me in my attempt to build my new empire and bring stability.
Your new empire?
The Jedi are evil. Sorry, wait.
The Valar are evil. In my point of view, the Valar are evil.
Yeah, no, that's wow. I was even like trying, and now like it's all parallel, basically.
Well, coming soon, we'll have a. I guess.
Well, actually, when this goes up, that true. Episode will be out already.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll have to mention that.
Secrets of Star Wars. SQBN.
Well, it's important to note that Galadriel, and I think it was all of Galadriel's family were not involved in the kinslaying. It was because they were kind of it because Fëanor was leading the vanguard and with his sons, and they were kind of a little bit delayed in following behind, so they did not participate in the kinslaying, at least, which I think is that's part of why I think they're kind of more redeemed later, is because they weren't involved with that. They were and they hadn't sworn the oath, so it's like that's two good things that they like the two strikes against Fëanor and co are they're not being penalized for that. So
yeah. It's kind of like you have an almost immediate separation into three different groups. With Fëanor going forward with the Sons and the Vanguard, and then everybody else. Is it? Finarfin or Finarfin? Is he leading the kind of second wave or the bigger group?
I think it's Fingolfin, because doesn't Finarfin say Finarfin doesn't go, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So,
So it's I think it's Fingolfin and his, because Galadriel's and Finrod are Fingolfin's children, right?
Right? Finarfins?
Finarfins, okay.
Right,
like
yeah.
We're supposed to be the experts on this, and we're getting confused.
Yeah.
If everyone's name didn't start with Finn, it would be a lot easier.
Well, I just need to print out the genealogy and paste it across this room so I can refer back to it, because that'll.
The meme with the guy with the wall with the stalker wall kind of thing. Yeah. And he's like,
yeah, Fingolfin is the second son of Finwë.
Okay. Yeah. So like you have the debate, right? Which was a lot of fun, to be honest. It was sort of like one elf trying to talk sense into the other one. And you could kind of see both of their points for a little bit. And I've always kind of wondered, I'm like, what if the Teleri just said, you know what, sure, you can take the boats. We want them back, but we'll take you across. Don't worry about it. Like how, like, it just seems like every step of the way, it was like, how could we do this and do what we're trying to accomplish, but in the worst possible way? How could we pull that off? And it's interesting because, Fëanor goes back after the conversation. He's just like, all right, well, diplomacy is broken down. I'm just going to take the ships. And then the fight breaks out. And then like the second host of Noldor shows up, and they're like, there's a battle. We better get involved. And so they're just sort of suckered into the kinslaying. Like, imagine being one of those guys. Because I'm betting those guys got left on the shore and being like,
yep.
Oh, you were kidding me.
Yeah, it's like I have to clean up Fëanor's mess, and then he leaves me behind. And now I'm a murderer. Great. Yeah. I like how at first Fëanor tries to guilt them into giving him the ships. Where he's like, he says, well, the Noldor helped build your haven. And he basically says, like, you owe us this debt of friendship and gratitude and stuff, but always basically like, yeah, but you're also in rebellion against the Valar, and we don't have to help you do something that's wrong, even if you're our friends. And also, you didn't build our ships, we did, they're ours. And he basically compares the ships of the Teleri. He's like, these are our Silmarils, basically. We will never be able to make ships like this again. And, we're not just going to give them up for your kind of crazy, like, rebellious enterprise.
Which, it kills me because, you think like if Fëanor had just said, you know what, I'll think about this whole Silmaril thing, and then the news about his father comes, and then it's like, okay, well, I've got to go hunt Morgoth down now, and doesn't make it about like, oh, we've got to leave him on because the Valar are so terrible. It's all about getting Morgoth. Like the Valar are probably, yeah, go with our blessing, you know.
Bye.
Yeah. We'll give you what you need. Find him, and we'll send Tulkas. He'll wrap him up in a bag and bring him home. You know.
Oh no, we'll take you along on a floating island to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many points where, like, if things had been a little bit different, you know, it's almost like alternate history. Like one small change, like, you know, things could have turned out so much differently. But then again, you have Fëanor's just personality, which I feel like, you know, he's just made a certain way that he's almost like fated to make these bad choices because of the way he perceives the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, I know Pat and I we recently did Dune Part 2, and it's very similar, you know, cult of personality of like Paul Atreides, you know, he kind of gathers gets the Fremen all on, and you know, I think ultimately Paul Atreides was more noble than Fëanor in a lot of ways, and wasn't strictly trying to get revenge and get, you know, he wasn't trying to get his stuff back and all that, but very similar. You know, it's interesting that because Dune and Tolkien, or like Dune and the Legendarium, were kind of like, Dune is kind of held up as the you know, what Lord of the Rings is to fantasy, Dune is to sci-fi. So kind of interesting kind of parallels there. And I know this was being written, you know, probably before Dune was being written, although this came out much later in the final form. So,
I mean, if you buy the Dune paperback, it literally says that on the back, that like, this is sci-fi's Lord of the Rings, you know?
Yeah.
Tolkien did read Dune.
Oh, really?
He didn't like it.
Yeah, I heard he was not a fan.
Didn't surprise me.
In fact, he said he would not review the book because he didn't want to say anything bad about it, because he knew if he had a negative review, it would sink the chances of the book, and he didn't want to do that to another author.
Yeah, something tells me Tolkien probably didn't really enjoy like science fiction all that much.
Well, I mean, him and this is a topic for a whole nother episode, but him and Lewis had that whole, you know, science fiction writing competition, and but Tolkien never finished his time travel book. So
yeah, I think Tolkien liked science fiction the same way that like Lewis did it, or maybe Jules Verne, or where it's sort of that, you know, what cool thing, you know, sort of the grasping, reaching for the stars, you know, futurist sort of like things could be awesome kind of a way. And Dune is very much like war never changes, you know, kind of a deal. See how many references I can cram into this episode.
Right. It's going to be like, it's like, you know, humanity's always going to be the same, whether they're on Earth or in the heaven, you know, on another planet. Humanity never changes. So, yeah.
Although there is kind of a similar breeding program to get the Kwisatz Haderach to get the heir of Gondor. It's kind of the similar. Well, no, I'm serious. Like, because Aragorn's kind of the culmination of the bloodlines kind of returning together to get kind of the king to restore everything. And Dune they're all about the Kwisatz Haderach, and you know, it's kind of like this Messiah type thing is what I was meaning. Like,
right. And I've said before that, like, Paul is the anti-Aragorn. He's Aragorn if Aragorn takes the ring. And because, you know, Paul unseats the emperor and takes his place and becomes like, you know, a person who's responsible for a holy war that kills untold billions of people. He regrets it later, but I mean, you know, I feel like he's that. Maybe that's why Tolkien didn't like it. Maybe he perceived that. He's like, this is what Aragorn could have become.
Yeah.
Now we're getting way off topic, but
Amazon What If coming soon.
oh no. No. Wait, we already have that. It's called the Rings of Power.
Rings of Power. Yeah. It's already there.
But in any case, so we mentioned before that okay, so not only do we have the tragic kinslaying, which is just the first of the kinslayings, by the way, and it's going to send out ripples later in the story, you know, when certain other characters find out about the kinslaying, because, you know, some of the elves who never left Middle Earth would never have heard about it. So it's going to cause ripples later. But when Feanor, you know, he's like, yeah, okay, oh wait, I almost forgot the doom of Mandos. We should probably read that out. I was going to say the burning of the ships, but we have to read the doom of Mandos, because I feel like that is a great segment.
It's like it's Mandos's like prime time, right? Like he gets to say all kinds of things. This is really this is one of Mandos's chapters, like where he really gets to say a lot, like because he tells them all about Finway's death. Granted, they don't know that's what he means. Spanor's if you broke the Silmarils, it would cause me to be slain, and I'd be the first. And he's like, not the first. And they're like, what does that mean?
It's like the peanut gallery.
I know.
I like what you said, like in an earlier episode, Pat, where like he's just in the background, and whenever someone makes a decision, he goes, bad call.
You chose poorly.
Yeah.
He basically says that to Feanor, and he's like, well, you spoke.
Can't do anything about it now.
Yeah, so you have said.
So do you want me to read it, Thomas?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. All of it, because it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tears unnumbered ye shall shed, and the Valar will fence Valinor against you, and shut you out, so that not even the echo of your lamentation shall pass over the mountains. On the house of Feanor, the wrath of the Valar lieth from the west unto the uttermost east, and upon all that will follow them it shall be laid also. Their oaths shall drive them, and yet betray them, and ever snatch away the very treasures that they have sworn to pursue. To evil end shall all things turn, that they begin well, and by treason of kin unto kin, and the fear of treason shall this come to pass. The dispossessed shall they be forever. Ye have spilled the blood of your kindred unrighteously, and have stained the land of Aman. For blood ye shall render blood, and beyond Aman ye shall dwell in death's shadow. For though Eru appointed to you to die not in Ea, and no sickness may assail you, yet slain ye may be, and slain ye shall be, by weapon, and by torment, and by grief. And your houseless spirits shall come then to Mandos. There long shall ye abide, and yearn for your bodies, and find little pity, though all whom ye have slain should entreat for you. And those that endure in Middle Earth, and come not to Mandos, shall grow weary of the world as with a great burden, and shall wane and become as shadows of regret, before the younger race that cometh after. The Valar have spoken.
I have spoken.
Now that's a doom.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it kind of like before this, if the elves would they have not kind of faded away if they never returned away, if they never left Middle Earth, would they have been just living there chilling immortally? Or because this kind of talks about that, and I don't know if that just kind of applies to the Noldor, if that would apply to any elf, but.
Yeah, I don't know, because it doesn't necessarily apply to the Sindar, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But they all seem to go over, no matter what, at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
The end of the Third Age, they're all like, yeah, we're all kind of tired of this. Let's go back.
Because they started the journey.
Mm-hmm.
So that longing to finish it, the sea longing, is still kind of deep in their psyche.
Yeah, what I absolutely love about the Doom is that the second part of it, that part of it that talks about them growing weary of the world as a great burden, and they're going to wane become as mere shadows. That's almost exactly what this chapter says happens to Morgoth. As the longer he exists in Middle Earth wearing his crown, like the greater the burden becomes, the more weary he is, the less he goes forth, from his throne room and the more of a shadow he is of his, former power and all that. So it's sort of, you get this sort of interconnectedness between the Noldor and Morgoth, especially the Feorian Noldor, who don't turn back, that they're both kind of, their dooms are now twisted together, right? They're now both going to just be crushed under sort of the weight of this thing that they're trying to grasp. In the one hand, the Silmarils and lordship over the earth in the case of Morgoth, and revenge in the case of Feanor.
Yeah, I like the part where it mentions how kind of in the shadow of death, will reign over you, kind of in Middle Earth, and you're appointed not to die of illness, but you'll know what death is. And that reminded me of, like, in that first kind of really like uneven and rocky episode of The Rings of Power. There was a line of that episode that really stuck with me, which is when Galadriel said, we originally had no words for death, and by the end of our war with Morgoth, we had many words for death. And it shows her in front of that giant cairn of helmets of guys who have died in the war. And it's like, they're going to know what death is by the end of this. They're going to be on intimate terms with death.
Yeah, it's very, Adam and Eve, like Adam and Eve were not supposed to, like they would have, had they not sinned, there would be no death, but they did. So there is, it's almost like Tolkien knew what he was kind of drawing from there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he in some of his writings, he explicitly refers to this sort of chapter as the fall of the elves, or at least of the Noldoran elves, as their sort of fall moment.
Yeah, because it's interesting because they were kind of the highest elves, at least in a lot of ways, like the most powerful. Because you had the Vanyar that were just kind of chilling with the Valar and doing their thing. But these were kind of the, like I think I've talked about before, is like the Vanyar are kind of boring because like they just don't do anything. Like they just hang out with the Valar for forever and ever and ever. But the Noldor, they're kind of the interesting ones that grow in power and craft and all that. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of, and it's like they've literally said Feanor was kind of the greatest of the Noldor, and he's, is the hardest, one of the hardest to fall, because of, going down this path that he did.
Yeah, I see a lot of like the, there's a lot of different visions people have for like what heaven is like. And you have sort of the hanging out with God all the time and being with the angels and Jesus. And that's sort of like the Vanyar, right? And then you have the playing all the time and doing fun stuff and hanging out at the beach and surfing. And that's the Teleri. And then you have like the doing stuff, like the people who really like love to do stuff, and the building and the crafting and all that. And that's the Noldor. And to me, Feanor strikes me very much as sort of a combination of the Adam and Eve story, but also the fall, Lucifer's fall.
Yeah.
And coming down, being like the best of them, right? And he's such an interesting foil / typology of Morgoth / the devil.
They're oddly similar, yeah. And I feel like that's why they didn't like each other. I think maybe they saw too much of one another in themselves. I thought Feanor's response to the doom was pretty interesting. He tries laughing it off because, I think he realizes the effect this is going to have on his followers. And I think at this point he also basically says, like, even if this doom falls on us, we'll go down swinging, essentially. And it is kind of like a fortune and glory kind of thing. The whole Earth until the end of time will remember the Noldor, even if even if this oath falls on us. So you can definitely see that pride. Like, if there's one word that sums up Feanor, it's pride.
Yeah, very much so. And I can't remember, is it this part or is it right before this part where you get the turning back of a whole bunch of the Noldor? They kind of know about. Like, I don't really want to be involved with all these kinslaying folks. And
yeah, I think it's right here because it after the doom, like the next line, it says, "Then many quailed," and then the next paragraph it says, "Finarfin forsook the march and turned back." So, like it's kind of happens right after that, like right after Feanor his responses. He's like, I don't care. Like, I'm just gonna keep, because it says Feanor's hardened his heart, and then gave his response of saying like he's not going back, he's staying the course. And but everybody, Finarfin at least is like, yeah, this is probably not the best thing to do, we're gonna go.
Yeah, I go back to our city, I'll be king, it'll be cool. Because I think that's what I think Finarfin ends up being effectively the king. And then eventually, as the entire lineage of Feanor drops into Mandos's hands, actually the king.
Yeah,
they all kind of.
Because Finarfin is, he goes back to Valinor, or back to Aman, and becomes kind of the High King of the Noldor at that point.
I kind of wonder about his like what he's doing, because you have like even your lamentations are going to be blocked out. So is he worried? Is he sitting there for, I don't know, it's like 1,000 years, 4,000? I don't know how long the rest of this is going to take. It's hard to tell with elves because they live so long. But is he worried? Is he sitting there thinking, okay, they're going to call for aid at some point and we're going to go, and it just keeps not coming? And I often wondered about that.
And all his children, but most of his children go. And so he's got to be like worried about them. Like, I know Finrod, obviously. Well, I mean, that's spoilers for later, but you wonder if any of the Noldor at Tirion go to the halls of Mandos and kind of meet some of the Noldor coming into the halls of Mandos from being slain and be like, yeah, so guys, what's been going on?
Yeah. It's like reading the obituaries every morning. Let's see if I knew anybody who's coming back.
But you have like a living obituary. You can literally talk to the people as they show up. But I don't know if the living are like allowed in the halls of Mandos, though. That's the thing. I don't know. I don't know if there's visiting hours.
Yeah.
Well, Melkor did go as a jail, or he wasn't, jailed there in the halls. So maybe there's maybe if you're in the halls, there could be visiting hours to.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's sort of that brings up questions about like Feanor's father and his mother. Like, why didn't he just go to the halls of Mandos and hang out with his not ex-wife? I don't even know how this is supposed to work with elves.
Right, yeah.
She's dead. She's not really dead, but she sort of is.
Right. She didn't reincarnate, but she's not. But elves don't die in the sense that they don't leave Arda. So she doesn't have a body, but she's still alive, quote unquote, because she hasn't passed on. Elf metaphysics is very interesting, but also very confusing.
Yes, I agree with you.
What's less confusing is why Feanor wants to get rid of Fingolfin's host, because he's clearly still nursing a grudge against his half-brother. And so he's like, yeah, I don't really trust these guys. They argued against me. in the council. I don't need these guys. So again, he kind of slips off with the ships to Middle Earth. And it's really sad because like it's Mithros, right?
Yeah.
Who I think is his eldest son, who is friends with some of the people they left behind, and is like, so you're gonna send the ships back now, right? And he's like, nope.
You're like, It says, I like how it says he stood aside, like while they burned the ships. He was sort of in protest.
Yeah, he would have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And how
it harkens back to, I think, the line where it talks about he was one of the few children of Feanor that had a little bit of his mother's wisdom in him.
Right. You mentioned the fall of Lucifer before, Pat. It strikes me that Feanor is very much in the Miltonian Lucifer mold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, very much Paradise Lost. Very prideful, very charismatic. He gets people to follow him.
Yeah.
But you still know that this guy's a bad penny. You know, you shouldn't be associated with this person, but yeah. And then they describe the burning of the ships as essentially the first fruits of the kinslaying. And now the doom that Mandos spoke is starting to be operative. That suspicion, the betrayals within betrayals, everybody, you know, suspicious and backstabbing of one another.
Yeah. Because after this, you have the Noldor and Noldor who, you know, groups of Noldor who now don't trust each other or like each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the Sindarian elves find out, like, things start to go sideways.
Things escalate quickly.
Yeah, that escalated quickly.
Really got out of hand fast.
Yeah, immediately regret this decision.
And then speaking of decisions, you know, at this point, Fingolfin's host could turn back because the ships are gone. And since the Earth is flat, they can see the ships being burned on the other side of the ocean. They can see the light. And especially because the ocean, they're up north, so the ocean is like, it's not as wide as it would be at like the essentially the equator of Arda. And they're at this point where they're like, you know what? We're going to stick it to Feanor. We're going to follow him just so that we can tell him what we think of him when we show up.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it by going down this icy path of hell.
Yeah. Literally has the word hell inside of it.
Yeah.
Hell Caraxes.
Hell Caraxes, yeah. Which Galadriel actually takes this road on which many Noldor die. So you got to think, like, you know, the stuff Galadriel's seen is sometimes, like, when you think about it, Galadriel's seen some stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I can't remember. She's like 5,000 years old in this scene, and she's seen some stuff.
Mm-hmm. But I like how they mention at the end that, like, they kind of go over very swiftly the passing of the Hell Caraxes. I almost wish we got more of it, because there's clearly, like, it's like this epic saga of them going across this frozen wasteland and losing people. You know, it's almost like if you've if either of you have ever read Xenophon's The Persian Expedition, I imagine it as like that. That was like where Xenophon writes about these Greek soldiers who have to make their way a fighting retreat over this icy path in the mountains, and a lot of people die, and it's like this epic, like, will anybody ever get back, you know, to Greece, you know? I feel like this would make an interesting saga in itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that front. It just feels like it passes over too quickly. You know, like, there's more here, but no, it's like the war. Nobody wants to talk about it because it was terrible.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, like, the framing device of the Silmarillion is that it was all compiled by Bilbo from people he talked to in Rivendell, and stuff that he copied down from books that he found there. Because this is what he gives to Frodo, that big volume translations from the Elvish, which is essentially the Silmarillion. So I guess he couldn't find any. He's like, hey, you want to talk to me about the Haecker? And then they have this 1,000-yard stare, and they're just like, no, I don't. No, Bilbo, I don't want to talk about the Haecker.
Yeah, that's spot on. No,
because Bilbo would be impertinent enough to ask.
Oh yeah,
and
more than once.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to me. Like this, so much happens in this chapter. I almost miss it, but this is very much the chapter of this is why we can't have nice things. Like the Silmarils get stolen. All of the other gems, Feanor and his sons get stolen. Those get destroyed or eaten by Ungoliant. Like the trees are gone. They're dead. They're never going to come back. Oh yeah, the ships, those get burned, and there's never going to be any more like it ever. Like it's just this tale of like, yeah, all this stuff that's really cool around you now pales in comparison to what used to be here.
Yeah, like the earth kind of stinks now. Get used to it. Mm-hmm. The golden age has passed away. It's never coming back. And it ends. I like the way it ends, where it says like the host of Fingolfin arrives in Middle Earth at the first rising of the moon, and they blow their trumpets. It almost reminds me of like the Rohirrim arriving at the Pelennor Fields, at like the last moment.
Sword moon, a red moon.
Yeah. Ere the moon rises. Yeah. Which, yeah, and you're probably thinking like, moon, when did that show up? Well, that's, for the future episode.
You're correct in wondering that.
Yeah.
Have not gotten to that.
So, yeah, what were like, you kind of wrapped it up very nicely there, Pat, is like, this is the chapter of why can't we have nice things? But did you guys have any other kind of wrap up thoughts about the flight of the Noldor?
No, other than, come on, Feanor. Like it's just like a whole chapter of come on, man. Like
come on, man.
Yeah.
Just like bad decision after bad decision after bad decision.
Yeah.
Who makes more bad decisions, Feanor or Turin?
That's exactly what I was thinking in my head. I was like, surely there's not a man who does the same flipping thing.
At least Turin, from what I remember of that part, a lot of that things are kind of happening to him out of his control, whereas Feanor is causing these problems for himself and his.
Turin's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah,
it just never works out.
Yeah. Occasionally, it's not actually Turin's fault. Mm-hmm. Most of the time. It's Feanor's fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is it for the flight of the Noldor. But this is not the last of Feanor. We'll see him next time, and what. But I think readers may be surprised about his future.
Yeah, if you haven't read it before.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, because he's not in Lord of the Rings, so.
Yeah. You know he didn't make it that far.
Yeah.
Or in Rings of Power.
Which is the Second Age, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've seen Rings of Power and you're wondering, yeah, they mentioned Feanor, they show his hammer, whatever happened to that guy? Well, stick around with the Secrets of Middle-earth. You're soon to find out. And speaking of the Silmarillion kind of adaptations, I guess, we got some interesting feedback from a Discord user, Mercury. He wrote us, regarding the Secrets of Middle-earth, episode 56 on chapters 3 through 5 of the Silmarillion, one of the comments about Tolkien's prose being good for heavy metal band names reminded me of my favorite inspired music, Certainly, Tolkien references abound in music from Led Zeppelin and Rush to Enya and even Leonard Nimoy, it says.
The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. Leonard Nimoy's greatest work.
Bilbo
Baggins. But Mercury continues, I wanted to share my favorite Tolkien-inspired music, the entire album Nightfall in Middle-earth by British heavy metal band Blind Guardian. The song Time Stands Still about Fingolfin's final confrontation is spectacular. Somehow, the instrumental part vividly evokes the slashes of Ringil and the devastation of Grond. Don't worry, viewers, you will hear more about that in future episodes.
Possibly an entire episode.
Possibly an entire episode just on that. Yeah. But yeah, thank you, Mercury, for the music recommendation, because I have now gone out and listened to that entire album. I had heard of Blind Guardian before because they wrote a Wheel of Time song that I really enjoyed. But I did not know that they did a whole Middle-earth inspired album. So yeah, Nightfall in Middle-earth is actually really, really good. If you like power metal, you're gonna like this. It's really awesome. In fact, let me bring up the album here. I wanted to find which song was it that I really liked. A Dark Passage is actually really, really cool. That is all about Morgoth speaking to Hurin, you know, when they have that debate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a really cool song. I did like Time Stands Still. That was a very good song. Also, the title song, Nightfall, is, in fact, I had that stuck in my head for 2 weeks.
That's pretty heavily of it.
Yeah. So thank you, Mercury, for getting that song stuck in my head. But no, yeah, it's a really good album. And there are these little interludes where they have dialogue from Morgoth and other characters of the Silmarillion in between the song tracks.
That's cool.
So it's really, really cool. So yeah, I really recommend Blind Guardian's album, Nightfall in Middle-earth. And yeah, thank you, Mercury, for the recommendation. And I'll definitely be listening to more of their music, because like I said, I had listened to a little bit of their music before, and it's all fantasy inspired, pretty much. So I like that a lot. But yeah, and if you'd like to leave us feedback, seriously, we love hearing from you folks. So, you know, you can tell us what you thought about Flight of the Noldor or Tolkien's other First Age writings. If you have more music recommendations for us, please send them. I would really, you know, I work from home, so I'm always listening to music. So more Tolkien inspired music would be greatly appreciated. And you can reach out to us by email at middleearth@sqpn.com, or you can leave a comment on our social media pages, or by joining the discussion, like Mercury, at our StarQuest Discord server at sqpn.com/Discord. But before we go, we'd also like to thank our patrons, including Maria N., Patricia R., Ron S., Ryan W., and Matthew T. Their generous donations help us to continue to create the secrets of Middle-earth and all of our shows here at StarQuest, and you can join them at sqpn.com/give. So until our next Silmarillion adventure, thank you, Jeff Haecker, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Thanks, Thomas. I would swear an oath about joining you for the next one, but I think we learned may not be the best thing to do. So,
yeah, not a good idea. Swear not by Arda. So, and Pat Mason, thank you as well, and no oath swearing.
Yeah, you're very welcome. No, you're very welcome. This is a lot of fun.
Doom, you chose poorly. And this is your doomsayer, Thomas Salerno. Thank you for joining us and listening to the Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy, PlayStation Portable. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at starquest.fm/PSP.